Let me ask you, was the sunshine, the learning, and I hope a little bit of laughter worth your time? Oh my gosh. Well, congratulations. By coming here, you invested not only in yourself, you invested in the transformation of animal sheltering. Best friends, we invest a lot into this conference because we know the power of what it produces. And so I'd like to take this opportunity to thank some of the people who make this magic happen. Our core planning team and conference support teams are pictured here. All these amazing people. We couldn't do it without them. And a special thanks to Annie Thompson, Rachel Ward, and Alexis Pugh, who made up the core leadership team. You guys are amazing. We owe you so much, and they're still smiling. Woo! Also, a special shout out to Alliance and Endless, who along with our amazing production team, make this conference a showstopper. Thank you, Alliance. Thank you, Endless. And speaking of showstopper, I would also like to extend many thanks to Best Friends team members who now, after all your kudos, you really inflated their egos, may quit to make millions as the dynamo doer Meow-shmellow. Woo-woo! That's DJ, AJ Caldwell, and John Graves. This conference puts pragmatic tools into the hands of people motivated to use them, you. The conference helps us reconnect with the truth that animal welfare is not defined by its worst days, but it's defined by our resolve to achieve better ones. Now, if you're like me, you may also feel a bit overwhelmed by all the possibility and promise and just everything. I mean, let's face it, it's been like drinking from a fire hose for the last 3 days, right? It's been a lot. So I want to take a moment right now and ask you all to settle in to what's next for you. Before you get back to your busy lives, pause right now and think about what are you going to do when you get home? What is just one thing that you are going to start doing as a result of your time here? Take out your phone right now, or if you're with someone, make them your accountability partner. Tell them what is your just one thing that you are going to start doing when you get home. And just as importantly, what is just one thing you're going to stop doing when you get home as a result of what you learned here? And lastly, what is just one thing that you are going to do to tap back into your why when things get tough? After hearing Julie's keynote speech, I was thinking about my why. And at first, of course, my why was this gal Rose, my wonderful dog, who started out as a Rio Grande Valley, Texas dog, but now is a Utah snow fiend Rose. I know, everyone loves Rose. She has fans. But as I thought about it, oftentimes when I look at Rose, I think of a woman with whom I spoke years ago. She began working for the shelter that Rose came from in 2013. This woman worked in the area of the shelter known as Pit Bull Row. And at that time, it was a place where the public was never allowed because, you might guess it, none of the pit bull-looking type dogs got out alive. They were all immediately euthanized after their stray hold. I got to converse with this woman in 2019. She'd been doing this for 5 years, and the pit bull ban had just ended at their shelter. And they were on their way to no-kill. And I asked her, I said, how did you manage it all those years, knowing that the animals that you cared for had no chance? And she said, you know, I don't know how I managed it, actually. I did it because I knew that that was all I could do was to give them a little bit of love and comfort before they died. But now, I couldn't go back. There is no going back. So this is my Rose. Rose is definitely my why, but my why is also this wonderful woman, Melissa Saldana, who now, years after that conversation, years working in Texas shelters, she now just recently joined the Best Friends team. She's part of our South Central team, and now she's helping more people like you find and act on their why. So thank you for being my why, Melissa. She couldn't be here today. Now, I'd like to invite to the stage some amazing people who truly have hearts of champions. These are people whose leadership, openness, and resilience have turned their personal why into saving countless lives. These are people who have been bold enough to shed old ways of doing things that no longer serve them, and people who have restored the faith, maybe even in themselves and definitely in others, to build stronger and more humane communities.
Every day, as animal-facing staff, we stand at a crossroads. Love and loss, hope and despair. It's not just the animals who come to us for help, it's the people too. We're the ones who hear their stories, see their tears, and hold the leash. And with every interaction, we decide what happens next, for both. I'll never forget the day a woman came into our shelter holding an elderly Chihuahua. She clutched him like he was her lifeline, her tears falling onto his fur. She only spoke Spanish, so a coworker called me over. I think she wants to get rid of her dog. When I approached, I saw the desperation in her eyes. The way her hands trembled on that leash, her body was stiff with tension. Her pain was almost palpable. I said one word, "Hola." Her shoulders dropped. She sighed a long, heavy breath as if she had been holding it forever. And she told me, "Mija, I can't afford Paquito's vet bills anymore. I don't want to let him go, but I don't know what else to do. I failed him." At that moment, I knew it wasn't just Paquito who needed saving. It was her too. Her grief, her guilt, her overwhelming love, all of it was tied to that leash. I had two choices. I could process the surrender and move on, or I could lead with compassion. So the staff gathered and we listened. We asked her about her struggles and what she had tried and what she needed most. Together, we found a solution. Through a temporary assistance program, she got the vet care she needed, and she was able to keep Paquito. The moment she left, still holding his leash, her smile, it said everything. She hadn't failed him, and we hadn't failed her. That moment stays with me because it reminds me of the simple but powerful truth. Life-saving doesn't start or end with the animals in our care. Compassion isn't just a nice idea. It's the foundation of everything we do. It starts with small choices. When we meet someone, we can ask, what's wrong with this person? Or what brought them here today? We can assume, or we can connect. And here's the best part. Compassion doesn't need words. A kind smile, a patient ear, and simply showing someone we care goes further than we can imagine. When we lead with compassion, trust grows. People stop seeing us as their last resort. They see us as partners. They feel safe enough to share their struggles. And when that happens, solutions appear. Solutions that save lives. Compassion isn't a resource we run out of. It's one that grows every time we choose it. So let's choose it every day, every interaction, every leash we hold. Because when we lead with compassion, we're not just saving animals, we're saving the people who love them too.
My first contact with animal rescue was because of Pickles. A 6-week-old puppy showed up in our pasture on a cold, wet February morning. We took her in the house, we dried her off, we fed her, and she turned into the most loving bundle of energy you could ever imagine. Immediately won over my wife and my grandkids. But we had recently lost our 16-year-old dachshund, and we had a 14-year-old Yorkie with bad health, and we just couldn't keep Pickles. So we contacted Haven Animal Rescue of Texas, and they did just that. They rescued Pickles, found her a forever home in Washington State, and made a huge fan out of me. I went to their next board meeting offering to help apply for grants. But when I left that building, I had a completely new outlook on how animal rescues worked, and I knew right then I had to become an advocate. Being pretty new at this animal work, I had to ask myself, how are you going to go about this? It seemed to me that a good advocate, one who is truly successful, would require two very distinct but parallel mindsets to work under. First, we have to be enthusiastic and compassionate about our cause and the interests we represent. Try to be that person that people associate with your organization. One of my colleagues here today, Anastasia, is often recognized in our county as the cat lady because of her outstanding TNR work. People look to us to be knowledgeable on both the pros and the cons of our cause, knowing both sides so we don't get caught in a topic that we can't provide a positive reply for. Whatever the situation, it's imperative that we stay comfortably knowledgeable at all times. Secondly, and very important, I think we have to put ourselves in the position of the people we're advocating. Think about that city council member or that county commissioner and the responsibilities they have. Whether it's administrative, budget oversight, regulations, whatever, it's a huge amount of responsibility. And they're under constant scrutiny from their constituents. People look to the government for relief, and that relief has to come in the form of money. So we have to remember that their source of funding is from the same folks we look to for our support. We call them beloved donors, and they call them the taxpayers. Having served as a city councilman and a county commissioner in a small county, I felt I understood the demands on rural entities. When I visited the entities in our county, my first words to them were, I am not here to ask y'all for any money. And when the shock got over me telling them that, I was able to invite them to become partners with us in our work. We utilize the public forum part of their meeting. We give them a 3-minute snapshot of our previous month's activities and a 1-page data sheet. We create a transparent partnership that allows our work to continue and gives them the opportunity to become a part of our work. We also provide that information to the newspaper for publication so the community can kind of keep up with what we're doing as well. I think it's also very important that we be consistent and public about our needs for our work. These partnerships are critical in our advocacy. This year, our county added money into their budget for our rescue for the first time ever. We've gone from a county where the first line of attack was haul all these pets off and have them euthanized somewhere. And now they call Haven and say, can you help us? In a recent grant application, we had support letters from the county judge, all 3 of our cities, a police officer, a state park ranger, and 4 local veterinarians. These are the kinds of results that partnering with your elected officials and community can generate. And now, while it's great to have animal lovers as in elected offices, it's not necessary to serve in those offices to be effective in your advocacy. By engaging the officials, just as you would your community, we can learn what issues face them and act accordingly. This conference and all of us here together with our best friends community is the perfect example of how partnering can give us great opportunities and gives us that means of advocating without aggravating, and will surely allow us to achieve that goal of no kill in 2025.
Good afternoon, everyone. I've been in nonprofit management for about 27 years, and 15 of those in the shelter management world. I'm lucky to be here in Palm Springs and running the Palm Springs Animal Shelter, a very progressive organization. But what I wanted to talk today is about my first organization I worked for, not so much a progressive organization. I clearly remember my first day as the executive director of the Animal Rescue League, a shelter in Pittsburgh in 2010. This, in fact, was the first shelter. When I was about 12 years old, I went with my family and we adopted our first dog. The shelter had not changed much from when I was 12. Physically, it looked the same, like it was frozen in time. What I also realized and learned was shelter practices were frozen in time as well. Cats didn't have much of a chance at a 30% live release rate. Dogs fared a little better at 60% at that point. So I started to ask the staff and the volunteers why we did things the way we did. And I would always get the same response, because that's always how we've always done them. One afternoon, a little kitten came in a few days old. Staff said they were going to have to euthanize her. And I said, well, why? And they said, there's no volunteer to take her overnight. And I said, if there isn't a volunteer to take her, can a staff person take her home? And the response was, no, staff don't foster animals. Why? Because we've never done that. I looked at that kitten, I looked at that face, and I knew I had to give her a shot. Staff were reluctant, but gave me a quick bottle baby feeding training. I took her home, and I was scared to death, believe me. But she thrived. She's now 15 years old and lives with my sister. Things started to change that day. That one situation opened the door to staff understanding that they had permission to look at new and better ways of doing things. I started to ask the staff, if you were in charge, what would you do to make this a better place and save more lives? The ideas, the comments, and suggestions started to flow in. Many of them at that time not achievable, but many were. Dogs only got out for walks one afternoon a day. That was it. And staff said, can we start doing morning dog walking? We asked our volunteers, and guess what? They showed up, and dogs were getting out multiple times a day. They asked about a new building, not achievable at that point, but we started painting, updating colors, getting rid of all the junk, and you know you all have junk in your shelters. We made it a better place. Volunteers were there, and they often say they were there to save the animals from the staff. We needed to change that. Staff asked, how can we build a better relationship with our volunteers? We started having group meetings. We started having social mixers where they got together and really got to know each other personally. And I knew the tide had changed one bitterly cold Pittsburgh night. A volunteer came and said if she could stay overnight in case there was any animal emergencies. Two of our staff volunteered as well, and they stayed and was there. That evening, 2 dogs came in and were saved from dying on the streets. That volunteer just recently reposted in social media that situation, so we knew it was great. As we were doing these things, a new energy developed, a new wave of energy came to our building. Our community reputation started to change. Our volunteer numbers started to increase. Our donations increased. Adoptions increased. But most importantly, our live release rate started to increase. Within 4 years, our live release rate went to 90% for dogs and 80% for cats. And that staff question about a new facility, in 2017, we successfully completed a $17 million campaign and built a state-of-the-art facility. People learned just because we did things a certain way that they had the power to change. They could reevaluate and see if there was a better way. Thank you.
Street Dog Hero began saving dogs on an international scale in 2017. But over time, things have changed. We all know there seems to be an endless stream of animals in the US. Even our shelters in the Pacific Northwest are experiencing capacity crises. So it became clear we needed to evolve to meet the needs of our domestic and local communities as well. And part of that evolution meant carrying those principles we started with internationally into our local community work. The biggest one, don't just take the easy cases. That principle was really tested this past summer. A nearby rural municipal shelter was being forced to close their doors. They had 50 remaining dogs in their care with only a few days left. These 50 dogs were primarily large, adult, pit bull type dogs, many of whom had lived their entire lives in that shelter. If placement wasn't found for them within these last few days, they would all be euthanized. We were all devastated by the idea of these dogs losing their lives for no reason at all. But the other local shelters had already taken all that their capacity would allow. Many other nearby rescues wanted to help, but were unable to take on this seemingly impossible number of dogs on such short notice. We had the same concerns, but it was clear that if someone didn't take responsibility, the fate of these dogs was sealed. Here's where I know that I'm incredibly lucky. The team that I work with was not only willing to take on this responsibility, they jumped at the opportunity to tackle this challenge together. And with the support of some nearby rescue partners, we pulled all 50 dogs from that shelter. It wasn't easy. We are primarily a foster-based organization with just 9 housing kennels on site. And not only were these large adults, but some had very little socialization. We adored them all from the moment we met them, but they were not a fly-right-out-the-door kind of crew. This intake required us to stretch our capacity to limits that had us all more than a little nervous as we were walking dog after dog off of those trailers. But as I said, This was a mission that our community cared deeply about. And fortunately, they rallied behind us like never before. Fosters, volunteers, media, other rescues, donors, people who had never even heard of us before, all of them poured in to lend a hand to the rescue that saved these dogs. Little by little, we were able to send them on their way to the lives that had been waiting for them. Here's where I get to share the most amazing news. Today, 49 of these 50 dogs have found their homes. For the first time, they are living as pets in homes with people who love them. All because a community of people, many of whom have no idea about this no-kill mission, believed in it enough to help us save their lives. I'm fortunate because I work with a team who not only believes wholeheartedly in this mission, but they also understand the importance of taking on the cases that need us the most. So, my plea to any of you rescue leaders here is this: be a true partner to the shelters and the communities that you work with. It's true, you can only do so much, but you can do something. And the something that you do should be focused on saving as many lives as possible, even if it's hard. Adapt your focus, stretch a bit, and leverage your support. Don't just take the easy cases, because these shelters and communities need you. There are so many animals like the ones you just saw here that need you. And when we all do our part, we can save their lives and so many more.
So I knew I wanted to work with animals when I was a kid, probably like most of you in this room. I've now been in this profession for more than 22 years, but my path started almost by accident in my teens. Right after high school, I moved to a small town in Georgia for college. And if you've ever been in a small South Georgia town, there is nothing to do. So to pass the time, I started volunteering with the local animal control. A couple of months into volunteering, one of the staff members left, and so they had an opening. But one problem, I was only 17 at the time. But on my 18th birthday, and I'll never forget this, I got a knock on the door early one morning. As I opened the door, there were standing not one, but two of the employees holding up this god-awful orange uniform shirt. They said, "All right, you're 18, happy birthday. Now get dressed, come to work with us." I'm not sure if this was the smartest or dumbest thing I ever did, and there are some days I'm still not sure. But that's how I got started in this career. One thing that I have learned is no matter how you start in this industry, animal control officers are expected to use enforcement. It's drilled into our head from day one. It took a long time, but I got to a point where I started noticing that no matter how strong of a case I built, no matter how many rechecks I completed or citations I issued, this expected enforcement wasn't working. Court cases would get thrown out by judges. DAs would refuse to prosecute animal owners because, it's just an animal, or it's not even worth the time or money to prosecute it. Owners didn't even seem to care. The same people that I would issue citations to, who would actually get a fine or some type of punishment from the courts, would go right back to doing the exact same thing that they were just fined for. Meanwhile, the poor animal is literally just sitting in this condition, sometimes for months. I saw these animals suffer because of a system failure. It was a vicious cycle, and we weren't winning. And when we don't win, the animals don't win. So I realized after doing this for many years that the system wasn't going to change. If I wanted to see things done differently, then I had to change. I needed to operate differently. I needed to teach my employees to operate differently. So that's when I stopped focusing on enforcement and I started focusing on education and compliance. I started having my staff spend a little extra time with people. Get with them on their level. Not judge them, but instead work with them. Help them understand the ordinances that we want them to comply with. And sometimes even help them make the corrections. By changing the ways that we approached citizens and how we were working to help them, it was building a positive relationship and trust within the community. Sometimes it just takes a few extra minutes of your time, or being judgment-free, or just working with these owners to see some positive results. If you see that they are trying to make corrections, maybe encourage them a little. Help them. Say, hey, I see you're trying and you're doing a great job. Can I give you some suggestions? Or, you've done a great job, but would you mind if I fix this one little thing and then you'll be good to go? The bottom line is, the more that we can help the owners out, the faster that animal is going to be living in a better situation. Another benefit to building that positive, trusting relationship with the community is they're going to talk to you. This is helpful for when your officers are out and they find a dog running loose. Instead of hiding behind the door, now they answer. They're willing to talk to you, maybe even tell you where that dog lives. Might even start up a conversation about some animals available for adoption at the shelter. And then you'll see that the owners will actually start coming to you for help before the complaints are made against them. The best part is then your community will start viewing your department as a resource center instead of this horrible place. All of this will ultimately increase your life-saving efforts. Just know, it doesn't take laws being passed, commissioners making changes, management changing policy. All it takes is one person willing to change the way that they look and do things. Then that person teaches two people, teaches somebody else. That becomes 2, then 3, then 4, and it grows from there. Eventually, you'll find that your department will get a lot more respect from your local officials. Because, yeah, they're still getting those negative animal control calls, people complaining, that's never going to stop. But now they're also getting positive calls about what a difference you're making in the community and how great the Animal Services Department is. And all of this started because one person was willing to try something different. I invite you to be that one person. Thank you.
In 2015, we realized our community was facing crisis. Veterinary deserts extended throughout the county, leaving pet owners with little to no options for veterinary care. We were inundated with the desperation of families wanting to provide for their pets, but just not being able to. Animals were being surrendered, not because people didn't love them, but because there was no access to affordable veterinary care in our community. The human-animal bond was being broken every single day right before our eyes, and we knew we had to act. Miami-Dade County is a densely populated area where 14% of the population lives below the poverty line. And with cost of care rising, even those living above the poverty line are struggling to provide for their pets. We saw families heartbreak, we saw pets suffering, and we knew we needed change. So we started small. We offered dog houses to keep pets safe. We offered food and bedding to ease the financial burdens. And we offered free sterilization services for community cats to prevent unnecessary euthanasia. Today, 10 years later, Miami-Dade County Animal Services sterilizes close to 20,000 cats per year. And we have one of the largest TMVR programs in the country. We opened free wellness services in veterinary deserts to keep pets safe. We brought veterinary care directly to those that need it the most, without barriers and especially without judgment. Our goal has always been simple: to keep families together. So whatever it is they need, enucleations, amputations, heartworm treatment, we do it because we know that every pet deserves a chance to stay with the family that loves them. We embraced creativity, and we modified our heartworm treatment protocols to offer a high-quality, high-volume service. Today, we are able to schedule all the dogs that we diagnose within 1 month in 1 day, and we're able to treat up to 30 dogs in that single day. This efficiency has resulted in over 2,000 dogs free of heartworm disease in our community and very happy families. As veterinarians, we are trained to seek definitive diagnoses before initiating treatment. But shelter medicine has taught me a very different lesson. It has made me a better veterinarian. I have learned to trust my instincts, to use every tool at my disposal, and to adapt in the face of challenges. Because even when resources are limited and the circumstances are not ideal, I know I have the power to change lives. Slinky and his owner are one of the multiple families we recently helped. They hit me particularly hard because in his owner's tears, I saw the bond that was about to break. Slinky is an adult cat that weighed less than 5 pounds. He was emaciated, lethargic, and severely anemic. And without many resources, we treated Slinky for the multiple conditions that could be causing his clinical signs. To tell you the truth, I wasn't sure if we would succeed, but we tried. Today, Slinky weighs over 9 pounds. He is absolutely... He is absolutely thriving. He was neutered last week, and we got to preserve that beautiful bond. This is more than veterinary medicine. This is a movement. It is about compassion, innovation, and the unwavering dedication we have for those that need us the most. And together, we are here to prove that no family should say goodbye to their beloved pet just because of financial hardship. We are changing the future of veterinary care, one family, one pet, and one life at a time. Thank you.
I stand before you today with a heart full of both sorrow and hope. Sorrow because we're faced with a painful reality, a reality where countless innocent lives are lost in our shelters every day. But hope because I believe with every ounce of my being that we have the power to change this. Every day, behind the walls of shelters, there are faces that are scared, confused, and longing for the simplest of things: love, safety, and a second chance. All they ask for is to love and be loved. And yet, too often, their cries go unheard. You see, every animal that enters a shelter is more than just a face in a cage. They are living beings with hearts that beat, with souls that long for the same kind of connection that we all crave. And yet, far too many of them are met with a fate that they never deserved: euthanasia. Today, I want to share with you something that is deeply personal, that has shaped my beliefs in advocating for those that need us the most. I'm sure many of you have heard the saying, "A dog is a man's best friend." But for those of us who've been lucky enough to experience the deep, unspoken connection with a dog that touches your very soul, you know that it's so much more than that. Something that transcends words, but can be felt by anyone who has ever loved an animal: the transformative power of a soul dog. Well, what if I told you that my soul dog was set to be just another statistic, a hard case that fit the criteria for euthanasia? My beautiful Ava was dropped off at a facility and given just a matter of days before someone was going to look into her eyes and make the same hard decision that so many of us in this room have made. Now, she was a handful, to say the least. Dog aggressive, temperamental, reactive with people even. However, when I looked into her eyes, I didn't see that. I seen a dog who lived a hard life that just needed to know what grace and patience felt like. Fast forward to today. Would you believe me if I told you that the same dog that I brought home, that was one of those hard cases that we see every day in our shelters, is the same dog that has solved multiple homicide and suicide cases, bringing closure and justice to families? The same dog that would aggressively react if another animal was too close to her now rolls around in the floor and plays with her canine partners, reuniting children with their parents after they had been lost, alone, and frightened, just as she was the day that she entered the facility, hoping that there would be someone to come and save her too. Beyond just our own lives, animals have the power to change the lives of others. They become the bridge that connects us to the world, and the spark that ignites hope, and the reason we can keep going when everything else feels impossible. Let me give you yet another sweet reminder that when we don't give up, even the impossible becomes possible. When Pluto first arrived at the shelter at just 4 months old, he was not the definition of what we think of when we hear the word puppy. He was not playful, nor eager for the affection that we had to offer. Pluto was scared, aggressive, and distrustful of anyone who came near him. His eyes were shadowed with fear, and every movement he made was in a protective gesture, as though the world had taught him that the only way to survive was to lash out. Through the shelter's dedicated programs, Pluto's life began to change. Trainers, volunteers, and caregivers worked tirelessly to help Pluto overcome the fear. It was not an easy journey, but those who worked with him never gave up. They met him where he was, and they spoke to him in a language of patience and understanding. And slowly, bit by bit, Pluto began to learn that not all hands were meant to hurt him. Now, Pluto is a different dog. He's no longer the scared puppy that's cowered in the corner. He's confident, affectionate, and playful, just like any dog deserves to be. But his journey, much like Ava's, did not end with their own transformation. It became a story of hope for all the other dogs at the shelter, showing them that with the right care, love, and dedication, they too can find healing. But here's the truth that we can't ignore. We have the power to change this. It won't be easy. It will take compassion, commitment, and relentless effort. It will take every one of us, people who believe that love and kindness are stronger than fear and indifference. It will take us choosing to adopt, to foster, to volunteer, and to speak out. It will take us coming together to push for policy change to create the no-kill shelters, to ensure that every animal has a chance to live the life that they deserve. Because every life saved is a victory. Every adoption, every rescue, every kind act, they matter. They show the world that we believe in second chances. They remind us that we are all capable of making a difference, no matter how small it may seem. And so I ask you, I challenge you, keep fighting. Who is the Avas in your shelter? Could that hard case be the next Pluto? Don't give up on being a part of the change that keeps them from becoming just another statistic. Thank you.
Wow. It's funny how just one thing can lead to other things, and when combined with time can lead to powerful transformation. Suzanne and Denise both mentioned the power of perspective in the opening session, and that really resonated with me. When I co-founded the first Trap, Neuter, Vaccinate, Return organization in the state of Utah in the early 1990s, not a single shelter ran a TNR program. Most of them hadn't even heard of a TNR program, much like many of the other US shelters at the time. But today, of the more than 50 shelters in Utah, the vast majority either run their own TNR program or support others that do. And year by year, I was able to watch and work city by city as TNVR was accepted throughout the state of Utah. It was a long, hard road, and many people fought the fight. But now, when I look back at that, what seems so arduous and hard, it's replaced with pride in the power of this progress. Recently, I attended a work session where a shelter was exploring the possibility of doing a TNVR pilot program. And one stakeholder there spoke in strong opposition to the pilot, saying the things you would imagine a TNR opponent would say, with the exception of one thing. At one point, he said, "If we do this pilot, there is no going back." And a city councilman interrupted him and said, "What do you mean? It's a pilot. If it doesn't work, we can go back." And he said, "Well, no, there won't be any political will to go back because the media and the public will give us so much pressure." And I'm looking around the room and I'm like, do y'all realize that this man just made the best argument for why you should do this TNR program? You know, right? The pressure would be too great indeed. Because like so many other successful TNVR programs, once you've implemented it, people realize it is the most effective way to manage community cats. The naysayer was right. There is no going back because no kill is inevitable. I have been, thank you, right? Yes, here's the inevitability of no kill. And I've been a small part of the transformation in Utah, and I've been more recently able to see 2/3 of America's shelter system transform to no kill. And this is what I know. I know that it could very well be your one thing that you came up with today that could begin the transformation where you live. It could be your one thing that is the tipping point for you, for your shelter, maybe your entire community. Because like Julie Castle said, she's right. There will be setbacks. You've probably experienced them, and there will be more. But there is no going back.
To some degree in animal welfare, we've almost been our own worst enemy. 20, 30 years ago, our first messaging was save that animal out there and bring it to the shelter where it's safe, and the shelter will take care of it. The shelter can do what's best. And shelters were euthanizing at terrifying rates at that point.
20, 30 years ago, so many lives were being lost in shelters because it was the easy thing to do and nobody was looking.
No animals should be killed in silence or in secret.
I don't know how any of us thought that was the answer, and thankfully that's not anymore.
Driving towards no kill is all about getting as many people in the community involved in this absolute wonderful mission as possible.
No kill isn't just a number or a percentage. It's a way of doing business. It's a demonstration of who we are as an organization and who we're trying to be for our community.
It's how you message it, how you market it, what you say, how you say it, positive reinforcement, positive phrasing. Yes, I think we can get there.
If an animal shelter has the progressive programs in place, that 90% will come. No kill is inevitable. It is an eventuality.
Never be afraid of change and embrace the change.
Striving towards and achieving no kill in a community it's something to be more than just proud of.
Being no kill isn't just what one person wants or one group wants, it's what everyone wants. It is an imperative, a moral imperative of our movement that we end the practice and we do that full stop.
And you know what? We're just better than that. We're better than that as a people.
It's uplifting. I see it in them. I see it in the faces of my staff, how they want to work hard.
Achieving no kill can be done all across America.
Let's get America to no kill.
We're bringing America to no kill.
No kill all the way is how I feel, and I pray we can all get on the same page.
Let's work together and make America no kill. We can all achieve no kill. It can be done.
We can take America by storm in this no kill movement.